on behalf of the Hillsborough Association for Women Lawyers and the Florida Association for Women Lawyers to insider tips on achieving Florida bar leadership. This is a joint fall event. This is the first of several events in the fall leadership retreat. We're hoping everybody will stick around for our events tomorrow and Saturday as well. I want to just point out a few of the handouts that are in front of you. First of all, you've got this, which is your CLE certification. You'll need to take that so you get credit for this. I also want to show, particularly for our South Florida folks, we've got a flyer here from a program called Women on the Run, which sounds like a really neat opportunity. They still have a few spots available for a year-long program that kicks off on Saturday, and there are scholarships available. I also want to make sure everybody sees this. We've got our fall journal issue coming out shortly, but we still have ad space available. The fall journal is a great way to reach fall members, over 3,000 fall members across the state of Florida, so please take a look at that. If you or your firm or anybody you know might be interested in advertising in the fall journal, you've got information there, and you're welcome to get into contact with either me or Jenny Mahoney. And with that, I will turn it over to Kristen Norris, our fall president, to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Catherine. Welcome, everybody. So excited to have you here in Tampa for the Fall Leadership Retreat. A couple of announcements before we begin. Obviously, nothing like this leadership retreat or the CLE happens without a lot of help and work. So I want to specifically thank Catherine Yanis and Miriam Valkenburg-Velez, who couldn't be here today. They really put the whole program together and spent a lot of time making it right. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Also want to thank our sponsors for Leadership Retreat generally. This is a big event that we put on. It's one of our signature events during the year. We couldn't do it without them. And Bill Schaffino is not only one of your speakers today, and not only President-elect of Florida Bar, but his firm, Burr Foreman, was also our benefactor sponsor for the event. So we're really grateful to him. Yay. We also had mission sponsors, the Bank of Tampa and Stetson University College of Law. Joanne Grages, one of our members, was instrumental in getting that, and also Kynes, Markman, and Feldman. Thank you to my generous partners. Finally, Voluntary Bar Leader sponsors, HCBA, PFAL, some of our PFAL members here, and Foley and Lardner, Rachel Greenstein helped us get that sponsorship, so I really appreciate that. We have a great panel here today. I know most of you already know them, but they probably need no introduction, but I'll give them one anyways. Robin Bresky is an experienced and accomplished appellate attorney, and she also provides litigation support. She is the founding and managing member of her own firm, Bresky Appellate, and she works with clients and attorneys in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade counties, and as well as throughout the state. She is our immediate past president, and she did a great job last year getting a lot of initiatives started that we'll be working on this week. She is also the chair of our Member Advancement and Promotion Committee, so you'll be hearing about that today. And she's an officer with the National Conference of Women's Bar Associations. So welcome to Robin. Margaret Matthews is an attorney and the head of the Tampa Litigation Practice Group at Ackerman Centerfit, a business litigator and board-certified admiralty and maritime lawyer, as well as a certified mediator. She has over 30 years of experience in federal and state trial and appellate courts, as well as before administrative bodies in business disputes, contractual claims, statutory claims, business torts, and many other matters. Margaret has been an incredible supporter of women lawyers in this community, a personal mentor to me. I just don't know how many women would have suffered without her guidance and help over the years. So welcome to Margaret.
Thank you.
And then Bill Schaffino is the managing partner at Burr Foreman's Tampa office and a board-certified specialist in the area of business litigation. His practice focuses on a variety of litigation and trial practice. In 2015, you probably know that he was elected president-elect of the Florida Bar, and so he will start serving in that position next year. He's also on the firm's executive committee, and he's on the board of trustees for University of Florida Levin College of Law. He recently completed an 8-year term as a member of the 13th Judicial Circuit Judicial Nominating Commission, serving as its chairman. And he was actually appointed by both Governor Bush and Governor Christ to that position. In addition, he's been involved in a special task force to study the enhancement of diversity in the judiciary and the state's judicial nominating commissions. Bill is a fixture in this community and now statewide. He started young, if I recall, on the YLD boards locally and across the state. And he also is somebody who's just a constant mentor and really professional attorney out there in the community, working for the betterment of us all. So thank you, Bill.
Well, thank you,
I'm going to let Bill speak a little bit first about the bar and what's available and opportunities that are there for you. And then Margaret will speak a little bit about the Board of Governors, and then
Still on my stuff.
I looked over and I've already jotted a few notes down. No, I'm kidding.
And then Robin's going to tell you a little bit about Fall's role in the appointment process through the MAP committee.
I think we're fine. Can everyone hear me? It's fine? Well, let me start with saying that, Kristen, thank you very much for that introduction. And you are wonderful yourself. You do a great job. As I speak about the issue I've asked to address, I would like to invite Robin. Feel free to jump in. Okay, I'm going to go through and talk about what I see out there and how to get involved. Margaret, you the same. I mean, I don't need to talk for 30 minutes. I think I would drone on and get tired of it myself. Robin and I met last year. We had the privilege of working together on the Board of Governors. And Robin, you did a great job. I hope you stay involved and hopefully you'll be on that board one day. Margaret, and I was listening to Kristen's introduction. Margaret and I go back 30 years. And I met her when she was 12 and I was 11. Margaret and I have served together in many different capacities along the way, on many different committees. Locally, Margaret was the president before I was here in Hillsborough County. Margaret, as you know, was the president of the local, our hall, and has done a great job. And Kristen, you're absolutely right. She and other women have done we've had some good women leadership in Tampa. And I looked at these two and I said, well, who better to talk about what leadership opportunities are available in them? But you asked me, so I'll go ahead and give you an overview of what I see. And let me start by talking about not just what's out there and in the bar, but talk about, you mentioned the diversity committee that Gene Pettis put together 2 years ago for the JNC and the bench. It was a great idea. We recognized, we had seen the statistics that we were lacking greatly in the diversity area on both the JNCs and the bench. And we bundled those together. A gentleman named Frank Scruggs from Fort Lauderdale he was our chair. We had representatives from all over the state, some fine women and men, judges, and some good folks. We put together, we worked very hard, very quickly, came out with a recommendation, 10 action items that are being implemented throughout the state. And there's a lot of work left, but we certainly need the Falls of the world, the Jivas of the world, the Hispanic Bar, CAPA, to continue to push in that area. And we talked about it and I'll go through it in a minute. We have committees that deal with these issues. We know that. We have an inclusion and diversity committee. We also have a committee with the Florida Bar that deals with the JNCs and the issues we're facing with the legislative branch. And a common theme you hear is that we as a board, the Board of Governors, need to get out and help recruit. Well, you have 52 board members. It's difficult for that recruiting process to be just a 52-person job. But we need to continue as a profession to send the governor as many diverse candidates as we can. We just need to, I really think it's one of those things we just need to continue to pound and get good people up there. We saw a real rise in diverse applications about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It's come back down. We need to continue to keep that up there. We've got a good ear up in Tallahassee right now. I always give Tim a plug, Tim Serio. He started his practice here in Tampa and been up in Tallahassee for many years. We've had some good, I think some positive appointments lately. And that's been a real plus. Tampa just had a couple of good appointments, diverse candidates. Judge Vance, Hispanic, was appointed to the circuit bench from the county. And I don't know if any of you know Daryl Manning. Daryl Manning is an African American. He was just chair of the Florida Board of Bar Examiners, and he got a county seat, which is great news. Good people. But that needs to continue to happen around the state. Let me ask a couple of questions, so I want to know my audience a little better. How many of you are on a Florida Bar Committee? I suspected about half. So I am speaking to those that have been there and have done it, so to speak. How about those of you who are on committees on your local bar? You get more. Most of you have either been or are on that. I look at for the Florida Bar, and what's available with the bar is you got the Florida Bar and you've got your local level. I could go on and on. Margaret and myself, and I suspect Robin and there's others in here, we made a career of getting involved at a young age, and it was not something that I sat out and said, okay, listen, this is how I'm going to build my practice. And really, it was a lady by the name of Marcia Rydberg, who I went to work for, that said, you're going to, here, get involved. It's the right thing to do. And that, I mean that it was the right thing to do professionally. It's the, this is what my mantra is. Don't do it because you think you need to do it to build a book of business. Do it because you're passionate about our profession. One thing I've learned as I've elevated up through these ranks is how desperately we need good people working hard for the profession. There are, and I could go on, and if we have some time, I'll talk to you about some of the issues that I'm hearing and I'm now grappling with, and I'm not talking about just Vision 2016 and the R word. I'm talking about legislative issues. I couldn't help it. It came out. I mentioned it. And there are some real dicey issues that we're dealing with now. And I don't think that's going to lessen as time goes by. I think these are issues that we'll continue to deal with as a profession, and judicial independence issues, funding issues, the access issue, the recognition that we have a whole segment of our population that is underserved. In this generation, I'm not pointing to my right, but this generation of leadership, there's not that many years left. I'm 55 now. She's much younger than me. But we need good leadership coming up, and that needs to be diversified around the state. I think it's been too centralized for too long a period. And I think there were too few that, my hat's off to them, that they ran with the ball. It was, they'll take care of it, whoever they was. But I think really it's too big a problem for a small group of women and men to try to tackle. I think I know next year, one of my platforms is going to be to reach out to as many of our members throughout the state to enlist their support in the Constitutional Revision Commission, which is coming up during that time. Big issue. We'll get there in a minute. But that's not something that I'll handle myself. That's not something your Board of Governors can handle. It's much bigger than that. A little bit about the Florida Bar and how to get involved. And boy, there is a lot to get involved in. I didn't realize this. There are 72 separate committees on the Florida Bar. I will not spend the next 20 minutes reading you that list. Vicki Brand, who many of us know, there are bar service committees, certification committees, court rule committees, substantive law committees. That list goes on and on. There are...
I was going to interrupt
yeah,
just
jump in,
because
please. No,
I was doing my homework, and I want to make a plug for the Florida Bar website. We've really worked on improving it.
Good.
And that is a good place to find those lists. We're trying to stop killing as many trees, and so almost everything nowadays, that's where you find it, and it's actually fairly user-friendly.
Easy to navigate through.
I just, because I was doing some counting myself.
FloridaBar.org.
Yeah.
And all of these are on there. That list is on there. The application for membership is on there. Now, and this I do not understand. I'll ask the question later. But for some reason, those 72 committees, their membership is appointed by the president-elect every year. So I have to say, I can't figure this out. But as to why, but I guess the long history is, and there's people that help. There's a lot of folks that help with that. But application process starts January 1. And it runs, I think, through March 15th. And then I fly to Tallahassee and literally go for about a week and go through who has applied. Now, I will tell you one thing that happened, and I'm hoping you as leaders take this back, and because I will write about it, it will be in the Florida Bar News, but you would be surprised. After the cutoff date for application, how many emails I got, Bill, I'd like to, can I still get my name in? Or even after appointments were made, I missed the deadline. It's really tough to start then getting people in. You know, I mean, it wasn't my call. I'd call Ray and say, Ray, can you fit one more? And generally the answer was no, we're full. There are, you know, there are limits on the numbers that you can appoint to some of these committees.
Jump in on that for a second?
Yeah, please.
So what Bill is talking about with the time frame is even more important for fall members if you want to be, and I'll talk more about it in a little bit, but now is the time to start looking at those committees on the Florida Bar to see what you might be interested in, because we have a vetting process through the chapters, and that we would like to be able to vet as many people that are interested as possible. And so in about February is when we need to get from the chapters recommendations so that we can get qualified recommendations to the Florida Bar for these committees. So, you know, before you know it, the holidays will be here, and then the application. So now is really the time for you to look and take back to your chapters to start seeing what you want to be involved with if you do.
Well, and that was I wanted to commend Fall in what they do for the Florida Bar. They make it easy for us because you vet it. We've asked the other voluntary bars to please help us do that, because what we try to do, and Ray Aberdeen did a great job with this. He really spent a lot of time, and others have too, not just Ray, but I happen to have followed his process. And what I will do is try to make certain that our committees have a diverse makeup that's consistent with the Florida Bar membership. And we spend time going through that. Well, what better way to look for that and say, well, I don't know, I'm not going to know 80% of the names. What better way than to have Fall say, Bill, you know, here are the top, you know, here are the 20, I don't know how many you did, but here's the list. Here's who we really think have, you know, earned that right, will work very hard, will attend meetings. So that's part of the process, is there is a very conscientious process to make certain that the makeup of these committees and leadership on these committees is diverse. Now, these committees, the day when they, and Greg Coleman started this, and it may have happened before Greg, but that is, Greg was pruning. And because I asked him about it, he said, well, Bill, one thing that happens is that you get people that they stay on, but they never attend the meetings. They don't participate. Well, you know, it's nice to say I'm on, we don't meet that many times, okay? There's the annual, you have a fall, you have a winter, you'll have calls, but it's you know, if you're going to get involved, and this is easy, you all learned this, I'm not speaking to the right group here because you are leaders, you're doers. If you get involved in these committees and work, we are looking for good leadership. Believe me when I tell you that at the end of the day, we want to appoint those that are willing to work hard. And the bonus is, if you know, is making certain that we've got some diversity. So Greg started eliminating folks, and I thought that was really smart. I'm going to do the same thing. And by the way, Vicki Brand, who works up at the bar, a wonderful lady, she keeps a scorecard, and she'll have here's who comes, here who doesn't. What we do, let me talk about now, going through fall, that's great. But you can pass this on. President-elects are not adverse at all on getting letters from you saying, hey, Bill, I'm really interested in this committee. Here's why I'm interested in this committee. I take those emails and I forward them to Vicki Brand. Vicki Brand has them in a file, and then when I will go up and we will look at, here's Committee X, and then we will look at that. And okay, these 10 people took the time to write me. Here's their background. They've never had a chance to be on a committee. I'm big on giving people an opportunity that haven't had a chance to serve. You know, I don't want to tell that, but that's the truth to those that have been on there for 20-some years and don't come. Well, I'd love to replace them with someone who's going to be there and be energetic. So that's important. But Robin, you couldn't be any more correct. Get your name, get in. You see a couple of other points. I don't want to run too far over. Well, on the involvement, get involved locally. That's a great thing too, to give back to your local bar associations, but statewide, we're here for you. And really, I invite you to reach out to me and let me know. Now, I'm going to speak for just a couple of minutes. Kristen, or do you want me to wait to the end to talk about the CRC and a couple
Go
of
ahead.
those?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And I won't speak very long. I'm going to and talk just for a couple of minutes about two things. And one you've heard, I suspect, a lot about. That's Vision 2016. Those are the issues that was the commission appointed by Gene Pettis. Gwen Young and Gene worked together to start that. Gene put it in place. A lot of that work that's been underway for a couple of years by the committee. And the committees, there were 4, made up of 68 lawyers, educators, judges, citizens from around the state, worked on those 4 distinct committees. First one started off as pro bono. That evolved into access to justice. That's the one that Justice LaBarga has now really taken ownership of and is running with that with his commission. And I'm hoping you're all familiar with that. Great group of, again, men and women, not just lawyers, but we've gotten business individuals involved. The recognition is you can't just continue to throw billable pro bono hours. That's not fixing it. We're not getting where we need to be by just going out and saying one more pro bono case. So that's more of a societal issue that a lot of folks are taking a hard look at. Bar admissions. Now that's the one that's gotten a lot of attention. Boy, it has. That's good. I look at what is good is the engagement that we've seen on the bar level. Not the issue, but the engagement we've seen, because there's a lot of other issues we're going to need involvement from everybody on. The issue of reciprocity admission by motion, that's one of the issues that have come out of bar admissions. You're going to hear talk about whether or not there should be an exception made, a way to help the military spouses. That's a small piece of that, not nearly as energizing as the R word, but that's an issue that's coming out. The Katrina rule you're going to hear talk of. The reciprocity issue, and as Margaret will tell you, and Robin was there last year, as your Board of Governors, as we navigate through any of these issues, we ask there are 2 questions. It really is, number one, is what we're discussing in the best interest of the citizens of the state and the best interest of our membership? That's actually our charge from the Supreme Court when we were formed in 49. Don't quiz me. Margaret's looking it up. She'll tell me I'm right or wrong. But that's our mission. Now, we have a mission statement that is much more expansive, and we have a mission statement, we have action items. It's really quite interesting. But those 2 issues. So when we talk about any of these issues, we'll ask those questions. Is what's being discussed in this particular case, it was reciprocity, do we think it's going to help the citizens of the state, and do we think it's going to help our members? Anytime we have these issues, we're going to whether it be that, the CLE issues, anything, we're going to reach out to our membership and do what we did. How do you all feel about this? And we have. And believe me when I tell you, we've heard loud and clear. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. I've traveled the state. President Abedin has done the same. Part of that is to have town halls, which has been very different. They just started that last year. But that's not your president or your president-elect getting up, lecturing you for 20 minutes and then saying, well, here's what we're doing, A, B, C, and D. Thank you very much. Good to see you. It's been really exciting, and that is you get down in the middle of the room and say, tell me what you think. Talk to me. Let's ask me questions.
They do.
And they do. And so we're navigating through that. That reciprocity issue, admission by motion, will be on our agenda in October. It is October 16th, and I suspect it will be dealt with on that day. Law school education, not getting a lot of press right now. It will. Law school deans are having a real problem. I could talk for an hour on that. I won't. Kristen would have a heart attack. They're having a real problem. I'm on the University of Florida board. That happens to be where I went to law school. But I've worked closely with all of the deans of all of our law schools in Florida. They're all having a problem. That problem is lack of applications. Applications are down at an alarming rate. Now, you may say, well, Bill, hey, I'm a lawyer. Maybe that's not a bad thing that we have less lawyers. I hear you. Problem is that's not happening anytime soon because these law schools have to fill their seats. What does that mean? That means that net is getting more and more expansive to get students in. LSAT, average LSAT scores are coming down. GPAs are coming down. I am not being critical. It's just a reality. This is what the deans are telling us. What did we just see? The average pass rate on the bar exam was the lowest it was since 1988, like a 68%. Imagine that, 32% of those taking the law school exam didn't pass. Wow, what a bad day for that poor law student who had just maybe incurred about $150,000 in debt. So we're dealing with, okay, how can we, one, we don't control what the law schools will make their own decisions, but the law schools are telling us, hey, you all represent the employers. How can you help us, work with us on curriculum issues, things like that, and so we're working there. Technology, we're really working hard on that to see how can tech be used, implemented to help us, all of us, members. The last thing I want to just mention is CRC, Constitutional Revision Commission. Can you imagine how interesting it's been these last few weeks since the redistricting decision came out by the Supreme Court? Our representatives are not very happy with our Supreme Court, which now has brought out just some issues we're going to have to address. We've already got the bill, term limits. Now there is a proposal that, and I didn't know this until today, that bill initially was to limit to 2 terms trial court judges, state attorneys, public defenders, appellate, and Supreme Court. Now it's just, they've tailored it back. So there's a lot of issues. The Constitutional Revision Commission convenes January 1 of 2017, but it's already started. The process started. Every 20 years, this commission is impaneled constitutionally. 9 members are appointed by the Senate President, 9 by the Speaker of the House, 15 by the Governor, 3 by the Supreme Court, and 1 by the Attorney General. That commission, the last time it was convened was in Lawton Child's tenure, and it was a very, when you look back, you can look back, very well balanced commission. But just think it through a little bit, that it could be a bit challenging for the judicial branch this time around. So we are working, or will be going to our Supreme Court saying, because that's our boss, okay, we have to work together. Let's prepare. Let's make sure the consuming public is well educated on the importance of the judicial branch and that it remain independent. I have talked way too long. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. Sorry. I'm glad to.
I'm next.
Yep.
Okay. I'm Margaret Matthews, and I'm one of the 4 members of the Board of Governors from the 13th Judicial Circuit. And I'm a little bit of a troublemaker, so I also had a big hearing this morning, so I didn't spend a whole lot of time, because I think I can do this without a lot of notes. But given the nature of the audience, I thought, I'll really go through and count. Okay, so there are 52, and we throw that number around all the time, and I checked today to make sure that does include, so there are members from all the different circuits. Some circuits have 1, we have 4, Miami-Dade has 7. So it's, it's a little bit representative. It's not exactly one person, one vote. So the 52 members, the circuits all have some Ray and Bill count into that count. There are 4 out-of-state members and 2 public members, and that makes up the 52. So just for grins, I went through, and it's 52 sounds like a lot, but after a bunch of meetings with the 15, with people pretty well. So I went through and did a count, and my count is we have 2 Hispanic males, 0 Hispanic females, and unless Maria Santa Maria is Hispanic? Is she?
I think so.
Okay, that was the one I wasn't sure of. 4 black males, 34 white males, 9 white females, 1 African-American woman. So it's just a little horrifying to me in 2015 that our numbers are still like that. And I have to tell you, this is a pretty big improvement. But out of 52 members, 34 of them are white men, and some of my favorite people are white men. But I'm married to one. I'm a mother of one. I like Bill a lot, but it's not particularly representational. And one of the things that I learned early in bar service, and I actually learned it through fall. Hall is a little bit of a troublemaker sometimes too, or they used to be. And we said, why are we spending all this money on fall? Maybe we don't want to be in fall. And so Edith Osmond came to explain to us that yes, we did. And Edith is a very forceful and articulate woman. And but what I learned from that was, because what I started to say, there are some visiting members on the Board of Governors. Robin did it last year as from fall, and Kristen's there this year. Somebody from Virgil Hawkins, somebody from CABA, and the last couple of years we've had someone from the government lawyers section. Anyway, that's the makeup of the people that are at the table. But one of the things that I learned about being at the table, and now that's a common phrase, but we didn't know this 25 years ago. Edith, through fall, got to go to the Board of Governors meetings. And I think at that time she was the only female in the room besides bar staff. And, you know, what we've all learned is that if you're in the room, they can't talk about you, for one thing, unless it's white men. But, and he's too outnumbered, so we'll push that. But, you know, they just tend to remember, you know, oh, there might be some different issues, you know. And as you get a little, one thing we are fairly representational. We've got small firms, we've got large firms, we've got, you know, a couple of solos, we've got family lawyers, we mostly have litigators. We have quite a few plaintiff's trial lawyer types, but not an overwhelming number. We've got defense types, we've got just business litigators like Bill and I are. But anyway, I just the color and gender makeup I thought was sort of interesting to know that, you know, we're still working on that. Part of the problem getting onto the Board of Governors is different circuits have different written and unwritten rules about who can run, and generally in Hillsborough County we have had a past president of the Hillsborough County Bar. But we have had exceptions to that, and we don't have a written rule. I don't believe we even have an unspoken rule. Sometimes there's kind of an unspoken rule about checking with people who would be ahead of you, you know, like someone was bar president before you were, and you're thinking, and they've never run. Some people think you should call them and check. You know, on the other hand, that might be why we have 34 white men on this 52-person commission or board. Service on the board is very interesting. It is a lot of work, and I don't know that anyone gets full disclosure about that up front because you probably wouldn't do it. We meet about 6 times a year, and the agenda is over 1,000 pages without fail, and that's sometimes not even including the grievance agenda, which is long, and you need to read them because you need to make sure a lot of things go onto a consent agenda. So if you haven't read the agenda, you know, and then there's a consent agenda and you haven't read it, then you're not doing your job. So I will say my iPad and I have gotten to be very good friends because if a lot of people still print this thing, and they have to bring like a bank or something. It's this much, and
it's crazy. It really is. You can't do that anymore.
With the iPad, you can download it, put it in one of those services like Goodreader, and then usually it's searchable, or at least the chapters are searchable, and it makes it much more doable, and you don't have to get surgery because one of your arms has gotten so long from carrying that bag. But, so it's a lot of work to get prepared 6 times a year, about 6 times a year for me. And the meetings themselves are actually kind of fun. It's a, you know, takes a certain kind of personality to want to be on something like the Board of Governors. So it tends to be outgoing people. Most of them tend to be kind. Most of them are hilarious. And they're not necessarily kind to each other. They're just kind to the world, because there are jokes, like just probably almost everyone has something that everybody laughs about when they start talking or something. It's very formal. People generally refer to each other as governor. So if I'll say, I would like to echo, now I would have to say President-elect Schifino.
Oh, yeah.
Last year I would have said I would like to echo or disagree with Governor Schifino's comments, and here's why. And that's sort of funny. They call the role, you know, Governor so-and-so, Governor so-and-so. The first time you go, you're kind of like, this is really weird. And when I first got elected or first found that out, my husband went to work, and he said, you know, I slept with the new governor last night. And that happened to be about the time that Mr. Scott also started his people were like, you what? So then they all went home and told that to their spouses for instance, see how many more people they could trick. What the bar board does is they make all the policy decisions for the Florida bar. And a lot of these things are policy that we talk about, like the R word is policy. And I just want to give you a little bit of an idea about sort of how some of those decisions get made, and just the magnitude of it. On the website, it says that our mission is to inculcate its members in the principles of duty and service to the public, to improve the administration of justice, and to advance the science of jurisprudence. I thought that was kind of lofty. And when I went to the University of Florida, the first semester they made you take this class called jurisprudence, and you hadn't even figured out yet, or at least I hadn't figured out yet, that all the cases were appellate cases. I was going like, where's Perry Mason? And where's the jury? Why do they, so anyway, so now we're advancing the science of jurisprudence. So structurally, there are, as Bill said, a lot of committees. There are substantive committees, and there are committees that are the way our bar works. Our bar is, if I don't mind bragging and saying, considered around the country as probably the model bar. And
No question.
most of that's due to Jack Harkness, who is the model executive director, and is a very forward-thinking man. And many years ago, one of the things he started was something called the Program Evaluation Committee, PEC. And I've had the privilege to serve on PEC the whole time I've been on the board, because I think it's so important, and it's so fascinating. So what happens is, you don't just get to start a new program at the Florida bar, and each president comes in and says, I want to start these 10 committees. Well, it just doesn't work like that. They get studied. Should there be one of these? Does it comply with our vision? Can we afford it? There's a budgetary aspect. So nothing happens quickly at the Florida bar. There are good things about that and bad things about that. And that's one reason why I think there was a fair amount of miscommunication about the R word, and we all kept saying, nothing's going to happen quickly. We're studying it, we're looking at it. It has 10 committees to go through. There's a rules committee to make sure, the rules committee does substantive things, and then the rules committee also looks just to make sure that we've taken out all the shalls. We can't say shall anymore. We turned attorneys into lawyers, and to make, it's called the Supreme Court Style Guide, and to make sure things follow up there. A couple of years ago, PEC studied Lomas, which you guys have probably heard of, and we just determined Lomas was broken. And because of that study, we decided we needed a committee we had a special committee last year on technology. And out of the special committee on technology came a new program that you probably saw. I think it was the Above the Fold lead story in the most recent bar news, the PTI, we're here to help you, or something along those lines. And it's really good, and it's particularly good for small and solos, because it's got a lot of information about technology and accounting, and how do you get a bank account, and what do you have to do about a trust account. And so many of those are frequently asked questions that the bar staff and the previous committees and the current committee have gathered a lot of that information and put it right in that spot in a very user-friendly form.
I just want to interject on PRI, and why do we have it? And it for those of you who are with firms, and you may never access it. You may not. But what we found, not what we found, we've known it, 70% of our membership are in firms of 5 lawyers and under. I think it's 50-something% are sole practice, some very significant are sole practitioners. And that's really, and that's where this, why we have this, why we put it in place, to those lawyers out there who don't have tech, departments at their firm. Don't call, someone and say, no, this is down, or how do I, set up a trust account? How do I market? What are, what are the guidelines? And how do I build a practice? And how do I make certain I stay within the guidelines? So we spend a lot of time and energy and money putting that together.
And it's almost a daily changing thing. They're adding things. There's going to be a lot of free tech CLE content, because that's the thing. The bar moves in lots of ways all at the same time, and so one committee is recommending we need competence. We need to put it in the comment to the competence rule that includes computers, and what they put was you either have to be competent or associate with someone who is competent, so that you can hire some guy to teach you. And I'll give you an example. It's Renee's example, but I don't think she's in here. That if you are leasing a copier, and I think everybody leases them, so you're leasing a copier, and then also your scanner and whatever, all that stuff stays in there. I mean, so when you get ready to turn it back in, you've got all kinds of confidential client information, or potentially confidential client information, stuck in there somewhere that somebody would know how to get out, and you need to know that it needs to get stripped out before you turn it back into the leasing company. Well, that's just not something that I think everyday people know, all the time. And so part of our purpose is to try to get that kind of information pushed out to people. The board is considering adding a few hours, 3 hours, to our
We've recommended that to the
CLE.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, when the Supreme Court makes the decision, but the idea is that those 3 hours should probably be technical, because you probably all know now you're required to strip your own documents before you file them. It used to be that the clerk looked at them to make sure that the metadata was out. Now you're supposed to do that yourself, and it's just complicated every day. I mean, I am, by the way, I saw y'all look at each other. I am older than he is. But when I started, we had typewriters. We had, I can't think what you call that paper that went in between. Carbon copy. Yeah, that's why we're also writing CC, and nobody has CC'd in a long time. And so if you look over my 33-year career, I've gone from, if you were lucky, you got the secretary who had the IBM typewriter, because it was a lot easier to fix stuff on that. And if you weren't lucky, you got a secretary that had one of these kind of typewriters. And faxes, at one point, I left a big firm and started a litigation boutique, and we had a firm meeting on whether we needed a fax machine or not. This was in the late 80s, mid 80s. And we're like, well, let's count how many faxes we get. And we're like, well, we got 7, this week. We had a telefax machine. I bet there's nobody in this room who knows what that is. We had a telefax machine, but they weren't sure if we needed a fax machine. Well, we got 7 faxes. Maybe we're going to need one. Of course, by the end of maybe that year, you were getting served by fax every day, because people could cut off the hand delivery time and or mailing days. And you know, the fax machines were blowing up. Well, now, when's the last time you got a fax? And if you got one, it actually comes like a PDF on your computer if your office is like mine. And, you know, so just the speed with which things have changed, and I don't believe there's any reason to think that that curve is going back down. I just think it's going to keep going this way. So a lot of what the bar is trying to do is serve our members, and by serving our members, serve the public by keeping us competent at those kinds of things. One of the things that we deal with is the budget, and I have to say, I think this is pretty impressive. Our operating budget last year was $42.2 million. 60% of that comes from membership fees. So our bar has figured out how to do incredible service. I can't remember the last time there was a dues increase. And as I said, I've been
13 years ago.
Okay, I mean, it was a long time ago, and you know, it's never much. It's like $25 or something when it went up. It's still $285, something like that. I mean, if any of you belong to the ABA, it costs $550 to belong to the ABA, and you get a lot more stuff from the Florida bar. So I found that's kind of an interesting thing that the Board of Governors deals with. And
Can I comment on that?
sure,
Are you going to talk about lawyer regulation and all?
I was thinking so.
Yeah. Because I just wanted to say that is unfortunately makes up the majority of what we spend that budget, and it is a significant number on what we spend on lawyer regulation.
Well, if you think of how many lawyers we have to do prosecution things, and how, you know, their staff
Right.
and their time and their office space, it's a lot. And, you know, now with, I think we about 85,000 resident practicing lawyers, but 100,000 on the books. It's a lot of people to try to make sure they're behaving. So what I want to say is just like that, the Florida Bar is the most zipped up organization in the world. I mean, there's an audit every year, and it is, you know, it is really run very well. I was going to talk about, again, board service. One of the committees that every board member is on when they first go on, and then some people stay, there's something called the Disciplinary Review Committee, and Paige and I did this one together when we were new, and we're just fairly horrified to find out the things that lawyers apparently think are okay to do or don't think, and then do, and then find out. Yeah. So, but on a more local level, what each of your each of the 4 members for Hillsborough County has 1 or 2 grievance committees that we need to keep staffed. And a great way to get involved in Florida Bar stuff is to serve on a local grievance committee. It's usually 1 meeting a month. It's about a half a day. Then usually you're assigned something, so you're investigating something or doing some looking at. It's not tremendously burdensome. It's tremendously helpful, and it's. But it is. I mean, I wouldn't tell anybody to do it if you are just having a crazy time. I think it's a 3-year service, and those appointments get made by us, by the local members. So if any of you are interested, I can tell you we're usually looking for people. I called somebody last night, as a matter of fact, because I needed one on one of my committees. And actually, I've never had anyone tell me no.
You also need non-lawyers.
And yeah, and then
Every
if you
committee
know
has 2
anybody,
non-lawyers.
and this is particularly, that's kind of a hard one to get, but they can't even meet if they don't have the requisite number. They have 3, but 2 have to be there, I think, for them to get the need. So if y'all know anybody, what tends to be really good is retired people who are either business people, or I've got a retired teacher on one of mine, because it's interesting. It's, they feel like they're contributing, and they are contributing to the to our whole society, frankly, by serving on these committees. So that's another way, and that's something that we spend a lot of time on, because I would say every meeting there are probably between 25 and 40 disciplinary matters that the committee needs to vote on whether they agree with sort of how it's going and the recommendations.
Is the timing on those appointments that you make the same as the timing on the bar appointments?
It's almost completely random because it's just when somebody's 3 years are up. So,
They're staggered terms.
so the best thing to do, anybody that's interested in one of those, contact one of your Board of Governors members, and then you just ask them, send them your resume, tell them you're interested in being on a grievance committee when they get an opening, and then, trust me, they will find your resume and call you back when something opens up. So that's a good way. The bar spends a lot of time trying to figure out, and Bill mentioned this, what to do about pro bono work, how to encourage it, you know, and of course, the fall has been very helpful in that, you know, where there's the big award ceremony once a year, and we do a lot of things. I have one I wanted to tell you, one thing that I want to be sure and tell everybody, because I think not everyone knows. You can go into floridabar.org, which I was saying it's now become my phone book because they don't have phone books anymore, and if you have a Rolodex on your desk anymore, people kind of laugh at you. So the coolest thing that I've seen is you go on there, you go find a lawyer, you type in their last name, you hit find a lawyer, and it pops up. You click on their V card, they're in your contacts, and you've done about 3 seconds worth of work, and the next time you need to find them, you can just look in your contacts. But what not everybody knows, and not everyone is taking advantage of, and I really encourage you to do this from a marketing perspective, from a getting known perspective, you can upload a picture so that when someone clicks on Find a Lawyer and looks up your name, like dial in Catherine Yanis, a picture of her can come up. You can put, I think, 3 areas of practice. It shows where you went to law school. But I think personalizing that it's completely free, and now, because the way you search it now, if you put in, you know, especially if you have a name where a lot of people come up, if you put in Smith or something, it'll show that picture on the directory part. So people will go, yeah, that's the woman I met at that cocktail party, and I want to send her that divorce that my friend is getting or whatever. So that's kind of a service that I think is really terrific, and I want to encourage people to use that. And then I want to echo, I don't know how I'm doing on time at all. I'm time to wrap up, right? Okay. I want to say Bill had Marsha Rydberg to encourage him. I had Bill McBride and a guy named Bill Henry, who was the president of the Florida Bar in the very early 80s when I started. And he came and gave a talk, and he said, you know, start by getting on, and he was talking about at a local level or a state level, but, you know, start by volunteering, because our bar is pretty much run by volunteers. The 52 members of the Board of Governors, by the way, are volunteers. We don't get our expenses paid. We don't get our, certainly our time is not compensated. So our bars are run by volunteers largely. And he said, you know, get on a committee, maybe at your local bar, do a good job. That's the key. It's the show up thing. You know, show up, do a good job, and then you'll get, you know, the next job, or you might get asked to chair the committee. And that is certainly how my bar service started and has continued to, you know, the point of where I've gotten, which is fun to do a lot of cool stuff for the Florida Bar. So if any of you have any questions, like I said, we'll have questions at the end. And,
well, yeah, but I have to leave. This is not just a last minute thing. I'm flying to Fort Lauderdale today. I'm speaking at the Western Fort Lauderdale Bar Association luncheon tomorrow, and I've got a dinner with some folks tonight. And before I leave, does anyone have any questions of me? Anything? Now's your shot. You don't have to. I mean, that's.
If we have suggestions, where would we send them?
Suggestions, you could send them to me. I mean, if you've got thoughts or ideas, where are you from?
St. Johns County.
St. Johns County.
St. Augustine.
St. Augustine. Now, would that be your Board of Governors, Michael Tanner and Fred Franklin?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
No. The new one that replaced.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There's a female.
I'll tell you.
It was Sandy Upchurch.
It was
Yeah, that's
No,
not-
but
she's
a
gone
judge
on
now.
to
No
the
longer.
judge, so
Sure.
I'll tell you, I printed it.
I would suggest you send any recommendations to your Board of Governors in your circuit, and you please copy me. And I'm in the on the website.
I have a question.
Yes.
last year, because I didn't get to do that, I was going to do this at the end, but since you have to
Yeah.
go, last year, Ray appointed almost 50%, 49% of qualified women to the Florida Bar Standing Committees. Will you endeavor to help us even beat that record if at all possible?
I have no idea if I'll get that record. Here's my commitment. My commitment and my track record shows that I'm always, inclusiveness and diversity has been a big part of what I do. I'm not going to look at, I can tell you, I'm not going to say it's got to be 49.9. I want to beat Ray by a point, but I'm a very competitive guy, so I want to beat Ray in most everything. Ray, I'm sorry, pal, you're out there. And certainly, he did a great job with that.
Great job.
He did.
I have a question for you, Bill.
Yeah.
What do you see being the most competitive committees to get on, or the ones that seem to be the most prestigious as far as Florida bar appointments?
Court rules boy, there's just a lot of people that want on any of the court rules committees. I mentioned the Judicial Constitutional Committee. That's another real big one that people want to get on. And they're dealing with some interesting issues. But find what you like to do. Look, many of them are substantive, and they're going to be unique to beneficial to your practice. I know people that want to get on small claims. They work in that arena. That's good. You've got all kind of animal rights. I mean, there's really, you cover the waterfront.
There are kind of two things too. There are the committees, and then there are sections. So a lot of times, what you might be interested in doing is you don't have to get appointed to a section. You just join it.
There's 20. I meant to say that there's 22 sections. You just join, and they're also on the website. And there's some whatever you practice in, there is probably going to be a section that is applicable, and join it. There's some really good stuff that comes out of it. I've gone and visited a lot of their, even if I'm not in it, I've been traveling the state, I go to their meetings, and really good stuff comes out of those. Yep.
On the flip side, are there some committees that you suggest for someone as like a first-time person looking to get on a committee, or committees where you have a particular need for more volunteers?
Here's what I would do with that. The answer is no, I don't have a specific one. You have 3 options. We try to give you your first, second, and third. Now, if you're willing to serve on anyone, I would just write that in and say, hey, listen, I get it. And my first 3 choices may be the 3 most difficult to get in. But I'm prepared to do what's necessary to get involved in leadership, so that's the best way to handle that.
I have one other question.
Yeah,
too.
sure.
Are the board certification committees open only to those who are board certified, or those who aspire to be board certified?
You have to be board certified.
You do? Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Vicki Brand made sure I told you that if asked, so. Yes. Anything else? Well, thank you for having me today. And really, Kristen, thanks for including me, and Catherine, you too. Okay, thank you very much. Great serving with you, pal.
We got it.
Okay, yeah, we're doing all right. Got a lot of work to do. We're going to be in October.
I take it this means you're missing our 5 o'clock meeting, because we have a 5 o'clock.
Vote yes for paying off the building. I'm sorry I can't stay for it, but we'll see you later, okay? Yes, okay, thank you, everybody.
Bill, that's for you.
What, you did
Oh,
that?
yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, take care, everybody, okay? See you. Bye.
All right, see you later.
I just have a few comments that I'm going to talk about MAP committee, but before I do that, I do want to thank Bill and Margaret. When I was serving as an ex officio member last year on the Board of Governors, they were both extraordinarily welcoming. And it has been just one of the, and I'm going to tell you briefly about some of the bar service that I've done in the past. That was one of the questions we were asked to talk about, so I'll talk about that in a minute. But I would say it is really a fun way to do bar service, to be involved with the Board of Governors. And I was really privileged to be involved. I was on the legislative committee, and even though I was only an ex officio member and don't get to vote, I got to make comments and participate, and it was really a wonderful way to see how our bar works. And they work very, very hard. And I know that there's a lot going on with all different types of issues, but these are volunteer positions. Everybody needs to also remember that, and everybody works really hard to talk about issues and to debate issues, and I think that's what we all need to do, and keep in mind that when we're doing voluntary work, we really need to appreciate what our leaders are doing no matter what positions they're taking. I'll tell you just a little bit what I did before I became fall president last year, which allowed me to be an ex officio member of the Board of Governors, I started in bar leadership back in 2000 when I opened my practice. My practice is just celebrated our 15-year anniversary. I have a small boutique practice with 2 associates, about to hire a 3rd, and 2 of counsel. And along the way, bar work has been very, very helpful for me in a number of ways. First and foremost, being able to associate with like-minded people that want our profession to be better, that really have good intentions, and you know, we get a bad rap as attorneys a lot. There's a lot of jokes, but the people that I have served with over my career, and before I started my appellate practice, I was a prosecutor. The attorneys that I have worked with have always been fantastic people to work with. I was able to start on the fall board as the chapter rep at the beginning of my involvement in 2000, and then I became involved increasingly over the years with fall, serving in almost every position on the board. In addition, at the same time, I did local leadership. I did a voluntary bar association for my local South Palm Beach County Bar Association. And I was there for actually 13 years, and I just turned off of that a couple of years ago. So that was a lot of fun. I also did president of my small chapter at the time, the South Palm Beach County Fall. And so all of these things help you and prepare you to do other things at different levels. So that's one of the things that we were asked to talk about is, you know, what was your involvement? And I'm not quite as young as Bill thought I was, so I need my glasses to go. Okay, so one of the things we were going to talk about is how can fall help our members involved in the Florida Bar, and what role does fall MAP committee play in that process? The MAP committee is divided into 3 subcommittees. And let me just back up for a second and say we've been working with the MAP committee for a number of years. It was the brainchild of Gigi Rolini, and Gwen Young, when she was president-elect and then president, was instrumental in helping us forge relationships with the Florida Bar. I don't know how many of you in this room will remember, but there was a time when fall didn't have as good of a relationship with the Florida Bar. And it was sometimes, many, many years ago, where it was more of an us versus them mentality. And I'm just so pleased that we have a wonderful relationship, how welcoming they are. Our mission is to create gender equality in the profession. That's part of our mission. And getting involved in the Florida Bar is a large way of how we're going to continue to do this. And we've made huge inroads over the years. Every year we've exceeded the amount of women being involved in the bar committees. It's due in large part to MAP and how hard everybody has worked on that committee. Last year, Brittany Maxey, as past president, did a phenomenal job with her committee, getting 49% of women, qualified women, on the standing committees. And then, as you've heard, you move up from there into other leadership roles. Maybe you're heading a committee. You know, this is the way to really do it. If you all in this room know people that would be interested in being on a committee, please encourage them to do that. We need more women involved, and we need more women to continue to move up the ladder. So to talk about the 3 different things that the MAP committee does, we are now breaking into segments. One is to promote women in the judiciary. The other is to promote women in the profession and moving up within the law firms. And of course, today we're primarily discussing how to get women involved in the Florida Bar. And that is been a big successful part of what we've been doing. I'm going to tell you on the practical side for a minute what you need to do. It's always a difficult time crunch. And those of you that are chapter leaders, you may have been involved with this and know how this has come down. Once the applications are done, we are very fortunate to get from Vicki Brand from the Florida Bar a list of who has applied to these committees. Then what we do, the committee works with our executive director as well, and we have to match our database, and I believe we're over 3,000 now, so we have to match our database with the database of the people that have applied for the Florida Bar committees and figure out first who are fall members. That takes a little while to do. And I'll back up a little bit and tell you from a practical standpoint, please make sure your members know, please make sure your information is up to date, please make sure they're registered, their dues are paid, because it's a database issue, and we need to know who is in there in order to be able to then vet them and to hopefully recommend them and to hopefully get them onto the committees. So it really starts with that practical issue. Now you should start saying, hey, check and make sure all of your information is up to date in the database, make sure your chapters know to check that it's up to date in the database. So then what we do when we go ahead and have that list, it takes us probably about 5 to 6 days to figure that out. We then go to the chapters and we say, these are the people from your chapter who have applied to leadership in the Florida Bar and who applied to these standing committees. Please let us know, vet them, because, we don't all know at the state level, everybody in the different chapters. We need the chapter's help in knowing who has been involved in your chapter, who has done a good job. And what we want to do is only recommend, we want women, but we want qualified women. We want women that are going to do a good job, because if we start putting people in there that aren't going to do a good job, our list is not going to be worthwhile. So what we need to then do is have the chapters vet that and tell us, hey, this is somebody that has served in a leadership role, or maybe this is somebody that's worked really hard on a committee. This is somebody who we think will do a good job for the Florida Bar. Now that turnaround time can be really tight, because by the time we get the list and we figure it out and we ask the chapters, I know last year it was just a couple of days, and then the chapters were, can we get an extension? But we can't, because we have to get our recommendation in. We have to get our letter in. So what you might want to start doing, and I know it's hard because everybody's deadline driven, you might want to start letting your members know that if they're interested, to let your board know in your local chapter, so that you could vet those people ahead of time, so that there's less work for the chapters to do in that very narrow window of time. Because we are looking for information about the people that have applied. I know Ray told me personally that he really concentrated on our list last year, and it was wonderful. Yes, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So would it be helpful to you, for instance, if, let's say, Hall was able to put together sort of a preliminary list of members who were interested in serving on Florida Bar committees in, say, January or February, and get that, and vet that list at that point, at least in a preliminary fashion, and get that list to you at that point? Or, logistically, what would be the best way to do that?
Logistically, Hall would be best served to get that list so that their board is then ready to go when the people actually do apply, and we say, hey, Hall, send us your information on members XYZ, and hopefully a lot
ready to
more.
go, and you just kind of hit send.
And just let us know, and you've already vetted them. So you're not waiting to vet them with that really narrow window. So I think the local chapters have to do that, to do that vetting. And the more that they can do on that end, the better it's just going to be for them. And we want to make sure we don't miss anybody. So, of course, you can give us the list and let us know. The one other thing you can do is say, hey, we think so-and-so would be really good. Your local leadership should let them know. But then we have a whole committee. Let us know, and maybe we would need to encourage people to do this. Now, this is on the MAP committee I'm talking about, but I'm also talking about Judicial Nomination Commission, running for the judiciary. So anything that you want a member of the MAP committee to do, and the executive board of Fall I'm sure will help as well, to encourage women to step up to these positions. We can do those in advance as well.
And I'm going to jump in and say on the J&Cs, because the bar, one of the things we do is we get to nominate a few of the positions, and I've been on that several times now, and we don't get enough applications from women, frankly. So I would encourage you to do it, and I would encourage you to work through them to make sure it comes to people's attention. But there are committees. Each circuit has a committee for, like this year I was on the Supreme Court, the second DCA, and then all of the courts under the second DCA. So people relied on me for Hillsborough, but then there were people in Manatee, Sarasota, those places that we say, who are these folks? But there were surprisingly few women apply for J&C positions, so I would encourage you guys to, not only to apply, but to, work your system through
We
that.
may need another seminar for that, another discussion. But no, it's true, and it's disheartening to see that not more women are applying. So that's something else we'd like to encourage people to do. So in addition, let's see, what else did I want to say? So talking about what Bill was saying and Margaret was saying, thank you, regarding sections. You can get involved in sections. I was involved in the appellate practice section. I just turned off 6 years on the appellate court rules committee. Now I'm on the family law rules committee. What I would really like to see is a lot of crossover leadership with Fall and the Florida Bar. And we're starting to see it more and more. And then what we can do as an organization for Fall is bring back a lot of the great things that the Board of Governors are doing and the Florida Bar is doing, and bring that back to our own organization and be able to even further our own organization. We only have 3,000 plus members. We should have a lot more members in our own organization. And if we can get people that are involved in the Florida Bar also involved in Fall, then that's very helpful as well. And that, I think that going, doing that is what's going to really help Fall as well. So I think that's really all I had to say on MAP. Does anybody have any questions?
I'd like to go back to the JNC issue and whether MAP can really, I don't know if MAP can help with that so much. I know the Board of Governors has been very helpful in my circuit, in the 15th circuit, but our experience has been that the governor has bounced a lot of us. I got bounced twice. I was on a slate that the governor rejected
Oh, the whole
entirely.
slate. That's so fun when he does that.
And so it's a little disheartening.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's part of the reason we saw a downturn in applications this year. But if you don't put them in, we can't get you on the list, and at some point, he might have to stop. I mean, he bounced some weird lists this year. It wasn't. I don't think it was female driven. I do think it might have been politically driven. And he has to bounce the whole. To get a new list, he has to bounce the whole list. He can't. But why he couldn't find one person on those lists is beyond me. But we made hundreds of phone calls asking people to put their names in, and the application process is a little daunting, but it's we're going to get more diverse judges if we have more diverse JNCs.
Yep.
So,
And we need diversity on both.
right, we do.
We do, absolutely.
I was just wondering, I guess it's more of a question for Margaret, is the Board of Governors going to open a conversation with the governor about not the bar selected members up for appointment, but his selection? So for instance, in our JNC, we just had 2 people whose terms were up, and they were reappointed without any opening of the application process. So we had people that would have loved to have applied or known that they had missed some window that was never in fact open. And so, for instance, we have 1 woman on our JNC.
Right. I will check on whether they try with that. I know that Tim Serio, who is the current general counsel, I know he has a lot of one-on-one conversations with different people from the bar. I don't know that we have any formal say, and quite frankly, I'm concerned if we have formal say, that might put an X on those heads or something. So it may be that the more informal works better, because he does like to send back, and we had a bunch of lists sent back, and so, which is really discouraging because you work so hard to get the best list, and it's a lot of work. I mean, it's, you've got charts and applications and a lot of reading, and then he didn't like it. So.
And the Florida Bar does also take recommendations from Fall for the positions for JNC as well, and that'll be coming down, I think, in March is when we need to do that.
It changes because some years we have 2 and some years we have 1.
Okay. So we'll have to figure that out. But the JNC recommendations also, we're going to try and do that as a little bit of a more formal process and get a jump of that on that under MAP committee this year, so that we can then make those recommendations to the Florida Bar, to their committee, before they then bring it to the full board meeting, so that hopefully we can also talk on behalf of fall candidates.
I think I remember doing one of those meetings on a drive for Easter, so I think you're right, it's spring.
It's springtime.
Excuse me, Robin. May I just say something on that JNC topic? In February, I attended a meeting of the Federalist Society, and it was suggested to me by several judges because I've applied for a judicial appointment in the past. And Tim Serio and other people like Peter Antonacci were talking about appointments to the JNC and what do they view as their role once they are on the JNC. And I was really surprised to hear that the people up on that panel said that their number one job is to pick someone the governor will appoint, not the most qualified person for the job. It was just amazing. And everybody clapped their hands. I mean, there was like 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
So I
don't think
hate to-
that's their job description, but that may be.
That's how many of them view it.
Yeah.
It's one of the questions that you get asked when you're interviewed, if you will
Yeah.
appoint the candidate that the governor wants.
Which sort of defeats the purpose of having a JNC, but.
See, this is why we need more women in leadership positions so that we can change that outlook. That's where we need to get to, so we can have more perspectives on that.
I'm very unfamiliar with the Board of Governors process. We had a member that was interested in serving as a Board of Governor or running. I know I've seen that they're elected, there's elections that go with them.
Right.
You touched a little bit upon it, Margaret, but what are there basic requirements for Board of Governor? And is that something that's statewide, or are you saying that perhaps it's a circuit?
Well, in some circuits, like Orlando has a fairly strict policy, and they have term limits, and you have to have been the president of the Orange County Bar to, and kind of, it's very hierarchical. For the most part, you nominate yourself. You have to get 5 people to sign your nomination form, and I believe that is. So if you go on the website and click on Board of Governors, you can go to your it does it by circuit, and you can see when their term is up. And then what you can do is, find somebody to run it. If either run against them or call them up and see if they're not running, and someone can get in line to run. But it is a self-nomination with 5 people to which just walk around the office and say, "Do you want a job tomorrow?" No. And then it's an election if more than one person puts their name in.
Can I ask you a question, Pamela, about that? So you say, for example, some bar associations say this is what you have to do, but the Board of Governors.
No,
is
it's not. That's not official.
It's not official. It's just sort of because the leadership of the local bar association is saying this is how we do it. But it doesn't have to be, as we know, always how we do it. Sometimes we need to change things up. And so if somebody wants to run and they're qualified and they have leadership, ability, then, why can't we say, the fall chapter, we've been president of, our local fall chapter, now we'd like to be on the Board of Governors, so I don't see any reason why you can't put your hat in the ring if you're a qualified individual.
I don't think that's the case. I'm in the Sixth Circuit. I don't think that's the case in the Sixth Circuit, that if there's any affiliation with bar presidency and Board of Governors. I hadn't heard that before.
Okay, there may not be. I know, like I said, Orange County doesn't. Remind me, 6 is.
But now it's passed on.
Yeah. I don't think so. Of course, you've had 2 great
We
members.
do. We do. Yeah, they're fantastic.
But
very supportive too.
But and I think Andy is threatening not to run again. So we were all kind of begging him to run again.
You should talk to him right now, though, to see if
Yeah.
he's,
Yeah,
tell
but
him
he's
to let
not.
you know if he's not going to run.
Yeah,
I know,
if-
just look at
I think his term is up this year, so he'll serve this bar year. But so his seat will go live, if you will, around the first week of December. Is my recollection.
All right, any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, we did. Well,
You did great.
29.
I know,
We
you
have
guys
another
are
question.
awesome.
We have another question.
Oh, another
Just
question.
wanted, if you could recap for us the best way to get involved with our grievance committee on the local level.
Okay.
Is that to contact our board of governors
correct.
or the circuit and send our resume?
Yeah,
Okay.
and tell them, Margaret Matthews told me to.
Oh,
seriously, because sometimes it's kind of hard to find, you just kind of don't know.
I've sent a couple emails to different people, and they
Yeah.
all say, no, I'm not the person.
Okay,
So-
it's your Board of Governors member. They're, in that capacity, they're called designated reviewers. And and that's, their grievance committee is the one they would appoint you to.
And that's really fun service.
Yeah, it's really
That's
interesting.
amazing.
And it's really necessary, so, and, you know, we would like to see more diversity of all kinds on that, too.
Well, thank you so much to our speakers.